represent many things. He is an educator, an agripreneur, a data scientist, a writer, and of course a columnist with most of the national dailies. He is a member of the editorial board of the Daily Trust, and he served as the chief press secretary to the Niger State governor. Currently, he is the CEO of Dooba Grow and Esteem Learning Center. Dr. Dooba is a specialist in management, journalism, ICT, cybersecurity. He is also an agripreneur. He studied in some of the best schools in the world, namely Leeds Metropolitan University, University of Technology Petronas, Malaysia, where he obtained his PhD in ICT, Harvard University, Stanford University, and London School of Journalism. Dr. Dooba, you are welcome. And he's from Niger State, so his brother Nuruddin. Okay, maybe you can. Do you prefer this one or this one?
I think this one is okay.
Okay, this one?
I'm short.
So they want you to use this one. Must record you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I've never been given a more difficult topic to discuss or a more difficult audience. I've spoken in front of politicians and professors. You know, they are critical. They are critical consumers of knowledge. But Islamic scholars are super critical consumers of knowledge. Whatever you say, they are breaking it apart, you know? So, today I'm going to use the tactic that teachers use. We learn that if you are given a difficult topic to discuss, you go to the class with a bunch of questions and you ask the students. By the time they finish answering, you are done with the lesson, right? So I came with a bunch of questions today. The main thrust of my paper today is to discuss how Islam can remedy the four major failings of democracy. Let us not kid ourselves. There is good in democracy. And as Muslims, wherever we find good, we take it. Because it belongs to us. Allah gives it to us. However, the question of what is supreme or what is better than Islam does not arise. As Muslims, we know Islam is what? Is the best. So let me start with 5 stories across 5 different countries. Recently, a governor told a story of when they were young adults. Suddenly, one of their friends, his father became the head of state in Nigeria. Immediately the father became the head of state, a military head of state. The levels changed. There were no levels before, but immediately the father became the head of state. He created this class between himself and his friends. So whenever they went to the house, the friends sat on the floor. If he wanted to travel abroad with his friends, and they wanted to use a jet, he would not sit in the same jet with his friends. He had to take one and assign one to his friends. So this governor was saying that unfortunately the father died. Before they could bury the father, My friend now had become the second most powerful person in Nigeria, because when this one's father died, because all of them were military people, their fathers were military big shots. When this father died, this governor that is talking now, his father became the head of state. And that one that was subjecting his friends to sitting on the floor called him. And immediately he said, "Sir." Do you understand this story? Because when he was subjecting them to ridicule, they were calling him sir. His friends were calling him sir. But immediately the father died, even before the janaza, he called his friend, because he knows now that he is the holder of the power, and he said, "Sir." Now, that example is from a military dictatorship. Another example, also here in Nigeria during military dictatorship, was when Sheikh Mahmoud Gumi said some things about how some policies of the government were not just. And the military responded that some ulama should be careful. They should be careful. If not, of course, you know what will follow. Then in Jordan, what do we have there? We have a monarchy there. I studied with one of my friends from Jordan. He's actually originally from Palestine, but you know, a lot of Palestinians are in Jordan. He said in Jordan, wherever you go, you are monitored, especially if you are religious. So they do not have the religious freedom that we have, even though they are Arabs. They understand the language of the Quran more than anyone else, but they don't have it. He said there was a time that they were suspecting him of being an Al-Qaeda terrorist, but they did not invite him for questioning. The security police, the secret police invited his younger brother. And the things they told his younger brother about Allah, I cannot repeat. Wallahi, I can't say it. Because I'm thinking if I say it, this building will collapse. Yes. That is from a monarchy. Another example from monarchy, everybody knows here, recently a crown prince decided to imprison ulama. Yeah? So I said I was going to tell how many stories. How many do I have so far? 4. 3? So let's go to Tunisia. Tunisia, a friend was telling me, an Arab friend, their president, a dictator, came out on national TV during Ramadan and he drank water and he said, look, if you need to walk, you don't need to fast. And I'm showing you by example. It's also in Tunisia, if you go to the mosque, you become a suspect. Going to the mosque, an Arab country. Now, the final story is about Malaysia. I did 2 degrees there. And when we were there, I have never met a people who are proud of their Muslim identity as Malaysians. Wallahi. The day I arrived campus, they said I should go to Mr. Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad was the head of hostel. He was going to give me my room. So when he read my admission letter, he said, Ibrahim Muhammad Dooba. Muslim? I said, yes. He said, MashaAllah. And he hugged me. Yes, he embraced me. There's no inferiority about their Islam at all. You go sometimes, you walk with Arabs, they don't want to show that they are Muslim. Or some Iranians. The Iranians will even tell you, I'm no longer a Muslim. Yes? You see especially the ladies from Tehran especially, other cities, they are very religious. But those in Tehran, you see their passport with a hijab, very big one, but you see them, you think they are from Germany, or you see them in another country. But Malaysians, what I want to point out here is, there was a time that the government announced that they were going to increase the toll fee, because it's a big thing there. You have to pay. Everybody has to pay. Even the Prime Minister pays. But because of security, he doesn't stop to pay. There is a sensor on his car that will just remove the money while he goes. You can see the social justice, huh? So all these countries, okay, they decided to raise the fee. Then within a week, the economic situation in the country changed. Then the government announced again. It said, because of our new situation, we are no longer increasing the economics, the toll. We wait until things get better. So as I continue my paper, I want you to reflect on these stories. They are all from 5 countries, 5 Muslim countries. Nigeria is it's a Muslim country, right? To some extent, maybe more than 50%. But look at them. Reflect on what kind of governments they practice, and how that allows them or prevents them from practicing social justice. Many times Nigerians will go to Malaysia, in the mosque, they will be correcting Malaysians about their ibadah, you know. It irritates me, you know. I say, stop correcting them. Stop correcting them. Maybe in rituals you are better in Nigeria, but you are not better on social justice. So learn their social justice, take it to Nigeria. You know? And some of the things they are even correcting, it's just a different mazhab. You don't know, and you think you know, and you know it enough to correct another person. For example, if you miss the Fatiha, and you meet the Imam in Ruku, the Malaysian will do his Fatiha before going to Ruku. Because it's Shafi'i mazhab, right? Without Fatiha, you don't have the Rakah. So, if we are looking for any model at all, let me even conclude my paper before starting the paper. We should look toward Malaysia. There, about 60% of them are Malays. We have about 25%, I think, Chinese. Then we have less than 10% India. But in the constitution, a Malay is a Muslim. You cannot change. And you cannot marry a non-Muslim, whether you are a man or a woman. If your spouse or your will-be spouse loves you enough, they can convert to Islam. That is why many Europeans become Muslims before they marry the Malays. So, the title of my paper is four failings of democracy that Islam can remedy. The first one before I start counting, let me first of all talk about what is democracy and whether Islam or Muslims want democracy. In a special report by the United States Institute of Peace, David Spock noted that Radwan Masmoudi, a Muslim scholar, asserted that there is no inherent contradiction between Islam and democracy, and that democratic ideals and principles are also Islam's ideals and principles. The report concluded that the explanation of why so many Muslim countries are not democratic lies in historical, political, cultural, and economic factors, not religious ones. Now, if Masmoudi's position holds, then it is pertinent to examine the commonalities between Islam and democracy. For example, what form does Shura take regarding the selection of a leader? The Quran and Sunnah did not give a specific answer to this problem, which leaves Muslims to decide based on their situation and context. And I agree with Abdul Wahab Khalaf, who said, now I quote, "In the system of government, the Noble Quran did not detail a system for the form of government, nor the form of regulating its authority, nor the form of choosing the members of the Shura Consultative Council. Rather, it was sufficient to stipulate the firm foundations upon which every just government system should rely on, and no nation differs from one another in it. Allah decided on predicting justice, prescribing justice, in his saying, glory be to him, and if you judge among the people, that you judge with justice." Quran chapter 4, verse 58. And on Shura consultation, in his saying, and they should conduct their affairs by mutual consultation. Quran 42:38. On equality, Allah says, the believers are only brothers. Quran 49, verse 10. As for detailed regulations to which these principles, to achieve these principles, Allah is silent on it, so that the rulers can lay down their system from their government and their council in a way that suits their situation and is consistent with their interests, without transgressing the boundaries of justice and shura. So the most important thing in Islam is justice, because as I will come to later in the talk, with justice, I can't remember the Imam, I think it's here. With justice, a kufr system can endure. Yeah? But without justice, even an Islamic system will not endure. Allah will not preserve it. Now, the silence of a successor by the Prophet. In the book, Contemporary Issues on Islamic System of Governance, which was generously given to me by Sheikh Nuruddin Lemu, it is reported that a tradition by Bukhari, the Prophet said, Sayyidatuna Aisha said, the Prophet said, I had made up my mind, or I intended to send a message to Abu Bakr and his son, appointing Abu Bakr as Caliph, as after me, lest some people should start talking about others who wish the same thing for themselves, that who wish to be caliphs. So the Prophet was afraid that some people will want to be caliphs instead of Abu Bakr. But then I said to myself that Allah will not allow that. He was hopeful that this is what I want to do. But he did not nominate his successor because he knew that Allah would not allow any other person. Concerning Shura, according to a tradition, it is reported that Umar radiallahu anhu said, if a person preempts the concerns of the Muslims without due consultation, allegiance to him is null and void. That is, if you want to be a leader without consulting the Muslims, nobody should agree with him that he is the leader. After Usman's martyrdom, the people went to Ali and stretched forth their hands to pledge allegiance to him. Upon this, Ali said, radiallahu anhu, that is not for you to decide, but for the advisory council and the warriors of Badr. So whoever the advisory council approves shall be the caliph. Ali said this. We shall assemble and consider the matter. When the people or the masses insisted that Ali should be the next caliph after Usman, he said, very well then, let us go to the mosque. For allegiance to me must not be in secret or given without the approval of Muslims. Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhu said, I did not want him to go to the mosque to take the pledge of allegiance, lest the people make noise. However, Ali did not agree. He went to the mosque. Then, when he entered the mosque, the Muhajirun and Ansar entered and pledged allegiance to him. And then the people, the masses, also paid allegiance to him. That's how he became the caliph. So far, we had about 3 ways that the caliphs were selected in the early Islamic period. By a group which selected Abu Bakr and Uthman and Ali, and that is one. The second one is by nominating a successor, the way Umar was selected by Abu Bakr. Then we have the dynasty, where the father passes the mantle of leadership to his son. So 3 in the early Islamic period. Even among the Khulafatul Rashidin. So in this age, the book I mentioned earlier, Contemporary Issues on Islamic Governance, attempted to resolve the question of Shura and how it's going to happen in this age. So I'm going to read from that. Al-Hal wal-Aqd refers to those whom the populace at large consider their guides. Back in those days, these people also included tribal leaders, scholars, jurists, leaders of different circles. They represented the people. This expression was not vague or ambiguous, and there was no difference of opinion as to its meaning. Society at large knew very well into the category that you belong. If you are part of this council, they know. So there was no need for any special identification. People in general recognized them, considered that anyone whose advice was not taken was not part of this elite. What system could be adopted in this age? The answer is that the advisory council, the parliament or assembly could be taken as constituting the Alan, somebody should pronounce this for me. I'm a very poor person in Arabic. An act, al-aqd, right? Such a body, whether national or provincial, can be elected on a majority basis, according to the book I cited earlier. So, what do we do about the ayah that says, Man lam yakum bima anzalallah? How many? 10 minutes. Man lam yakum bima anzalallah fa ulaika humul kafirun. It repeats, right? Man lam yakum bima anzalallah fa ulaika. So how do we handle this ayah? From my little research, scholars say that whatever Allah has revealed is true and must be used. However, there are circumstances which may not allow them to be implemented. If your context does not allow them to be implemented, that doesn't mean you are a kafir or you don't believe in what Allah has revealed. However, if you believe, like some people do, especially not even in the West, even in Africa here, that Allah is wrong, then you are a disbeliever. Now, let's ask this question. Do we want democracy? That citizens of Muslim countries, do they want democracy? Because in the strictest time of terms, we have only 3 Muslim countries. Pakistan, Iran, thank you, and Mauritania. Strict Islamic countries that they want to operate fully according to Islam. So others who are living in democratic countries, do we want democracy? According to Pew Research, many Muslims, the majority of Muslims in democratic countries, they want democracy. I know I want democracy. I grew up here in Mina, and when we had military rule, even wearing of boots that remotely resemble that of the military, they will kick you and seize the boots. You know, I don't want to wear military boots, but I don't want that kind of restriction that maybe in the next 10 years I may want to wear them, yeah? And I'll be kicked. So, as far as I'm concerned, this dispensation may not be perfect, but it's better than that one. When they toppled Gaddafi, I was in another country, and one of my bosses, a former governor in northwestern Nigeria, was given a contract to model Libya in the image of Malaysia. You know, there is development, there is Islam, you know, there is prosperity. That was what they wanted. So this, my boss, invited me that I should recruit young academics for him. So in one of the meetings we met with the ambassador, and the ambassador, the way he was talking about Muammar Gaddafi, I was shocked. Obviously, they were tired of him. They didn't like him. That was the fact. Even though we here at a distance, we respected him, we thought he was doing well. In fact, up to now, I think he did well in terms of the welfare of his people. On campus, I met friends, Libyans, who were so angry at Gaddafi. and they were happy that he was killed. But before I joined that university, my master's was in psychology, so I started thinking, if these people had all these things under Gaddafi, what were they looking for? They were looking for freedom. Even if they are not going to exercise some form of that freedom, they want to know that they have it. And it is human nature to be able to predict an end of something. For example, when we fast, the Prophet said we are happy for two reasons, right? That we've come to the end of the day of the fast, and what? Very good. So we want it to end. If you have someone who doesn't want to vacate his office and is going to stay there forever, then people can get tired. Of course, maybe now they are regretting because Libya is in shambles. However, they wanted that democracy. They wanted to be free. Any form of democracy you can give them. So that is human nature, to be able to say, I have some levels of freedom. And these friends I was talking about, they were at that time enjoying scholarship from Gaddafi. Very generous scholarship. So it's not all about comfort. Human beings desire more than comfort. They desire more than even happiness. They want meaning. They want autonomy. They want mastery. And these three things, they don't think they can get it under a dictatorship. Now, 4 things that some scholars said are wrong with democracy. Dr. Babayo mentioned it. Dr. Bugaji also mentioned it. You know, number 1, that is, the vote of one person is equal to the vote of another person. It doesn't matter who they are. And the first person to attack that is Athenian, a Greek, the founder of Greek philosophy, Socrates. Dr. Babaya mentioned him earlier. Actually, he is the father of Western philosophy, Socrates, and the father of Plato, Aristotle, all of them, he was their teacher. So what he said is that he gave an analogy. Plato, in his book called The Republic, he says Socrates asked in a conversation with another character that if you want to travel on a ship in the sea, who would you want somebody who is trained in the science of piloting the ship, or anyone else? And the guy said, any, of course, I prefer somebody trained. And he said, why do you want someone who doesn't know anything to elect a leader for you? He wasn't being elitist. Socrates believed that voting should be taught. It's a skill that you should learn, the way you learn piloting a ship. And Islam has answers to that. Because if you say you are going to give the vote to only some certain people, maybe professors or the Islamic scholars here, or Islamic scholars all over Nigeria, then the leaders will only please these Islamic scholars. They will forget the masses because they want a second term, or because they don't want to be criticized, or etc, etc. So one vote, one person, one vote has its advantages. And if we are going to maintain it, then Islam has answers to that. One answer is to teach people how to elect their leaders. Then remind them over and over again. The Quran says, "Fazakir," right? Why? Why do we remind? Because reminders benefit. Another way to solve that problem is to teach people what is leadership. Everybody should have basic leadership training. For example, Umar radiallahu anhu defined leadership as justice. As firmness without injustice. Firmness without injustice. And mercy without weakness. That is, you are not going to be taken advantage of. So, firmness without injustice and mercy without weakness. When I learned that definition of leadership, it blew my mind. It encapsulates everything. And if you look at a leader and you see his failings, you can find it in this definition. And Zulkarnain in Kaf, Surah Al-Kaf, when Allah says, Zulkarnain, you can punish these people or you can find a way for them towards guidance. And what did Zulkarnain say? He said, yes? Very good. You have, I want to hear that recitation. Zulkarnain said, for somebody who does wrong, we are going to punish him. And then he will be returned to Allah, where Allah will punish him. But anyone who does something good, Allah will give him paradise. And we are going to talk to him from our position of command with what? With ease. We, the leaders, we are going to respect him. We're not going to reward him. Reward is with Allah. But we are going to respect him. So that's another definition of leadership. Then here, Al-Imam Mawardi stated 7 conditions for choosing a ruler. 1, the ruler should be fair and just. He should have a sound hearing and speaking organ. That's number 2. Number 3, he should be free from disabilities. Number 4, he should have a good thinking ability. Number 5, he should be brave. Number 6, knowledgeable. Number 7, he should be from the Quraysh. Imam Abu Yala stated 4 conditions. Number 1, the ruler should be a descendant of Quraysh, which is the same with the last one there. Number 2, he should have the qualities of a judge, such as maturity and sanity. Number 3, he should possess political and military skills. And number 4, he should be the best in knowledge and religion. However, Ibn Khaldun explains that the condition of being a descendant of the Quraysh goes beyond the literal meaning, because coming from a particular tribe has no inclination with the intent maqasid of Sharia. He interpreted the descending from Quraysh as having asabiya, social cohesion, with emphasis on unity and consciousness, somebody that will unite the ummah. 2, I think 2 more minutes, please. Thank you. 2, the second problem with democracy is it's not compatible with capitalism. While democracy wants to strive for equality of the people, capitalism is survival of the fittest. In Islam can answer that. In Islam, we strive for equality of opportunities. not equality of outcome. Allah, all of us, Allah gives us reason, right? Then he said, Imma shakiran or makafura. You can choose. We've given you this opportunity, choose. And there are so many verses like that where Allah said we should choose. So in Islam, a leader must provide equal opportunities for people. If I'm going to, if the government is going to employ people in NNPC, there should be equal opportunity, right from their education. You educate them the same way, etc. You advertise, you follow the process. But of course, those who are better are going to get it. Islam does not guarantee outcome. Even those who went to the Prophet and said, some people have money and they are given sadaqah, we don't have. He said, go and do so-so askar. They came back and said, the people with money also are doing the same thing. What did the Prophet say? He said, did he say, I'm going to collect their money and share? No. So, no guaranteed equality of outcome. Then, of course, Zakat. Zakat. The Guardian, UK Guardian, non-Nigerian Guardian, said that Zakat, the Muslim Zakat, is the largest wealth transfer in the world. You transfer wealth from the wealthy to the poor. It's the largest in the world. Every year, Muslims transfer $500 billion from those who have to those who do not have. And that is because not everybody is even given zakat. If everyone is given zakat, it will solve the problems of the world. The third one, tyranny of the majority. In democracy, the majority always have their say. And they say the minority has its rights. But then, if the majority win, they are likely to subjugate the minority. But Islam has an answer for that. In Islam, a leader actively seeks out the weak people, the way Umar was doing, the way Abu Bakr was doing. And there was one case in Malaysia where it became a national scandal. They met a set of people who were very poor. And they said, why didn't they discover these people sooner with all this zakat wealth that we had? So immediately the people were lifted out of their poor condition. That taught me a lot from Malaysia. It means in the country there were no people poorer than them, to the extent their discovery was news. Their discovery was news. So they gave them the zakat fund. 4, how much power should a leader get? In Islam, a leader is given the power from the Sunnah and the Quran. And then there is Shura Council. Then the response of Abu Hanifa, one caliph or sultan wanted to appoint him. Abu Hanifa didn't want to be appointed. So the sultan went to him and said, why don't you want to come into my government? He said, those that are supposed to go into your government are supposed to be the people that can tell you the truth. I feel I cannot tell you the truth. In fact, if I come to you, I'm always afraid until I leave your presence. So, if you can't tell a leader the truth, don't accept his appointment. Because then you will be too powerful, nobody can hold him back. So that's how much power a leader should have. Now, I'm going to conclude with Ibn Taymiyyah's saying. Ibn Taymiyyah, while stressing the importance of justice in an un-Islamic state, said, human welfare in matters of this world can be attained with justice that is accompanied by sins. That is, justice with sins, than with injustice in matters of people's rights, even if that does not accompany other sins. Let's say they are masoom, but they do injustice. Still, you cannot establish a welfare for the people. Allah will not preserve that. That is why it has been said, God establishes a just state, dawla, be it unbelieving, but does not establish an unjust state, be it Muslim. It is also said, the affairs of this world can last with justice and unbelief, but cannot last with injustice and Islam. The Prophet has said, in the same vein, no sin is quicker in divine chastisement than usurping of people's rights and severance of family ties. The usurper is punished in this world, even if he might be forgiven in the hereafter. For justice is the principle of everything. Thus, inasmuch as its affairs are based on justice, a state will persist, even if its rulers have no share in the hereafter, due to lack of faith. And if justice is absent, it will not persist, even if its rulers are rewarded in the hereafter for their faith. These words of Ibn Taymiyyah, according to Ibrahim and Jum, do not imply secularism, but insist that justice is a rational necessity in any political system. And many speakers have spoken about our own Islamic version of democracy. Let's practice our own Islamic version of democracy. Let's codify it. Let's call it a name. Many internet marketers, if they want to sell products, they coin a new formula for it and give it a unique name, so that even if you don't want to pay for it, you will be forced to pay for it. If they give it a generic name, you start searching Google for it and you get it for free. So let's us codify the processes of our own Islamic government. Like other speakers have said, we have something which is superior. Let us practice it. Let us put it in practice. If people don't embrace it now, they will embrace it in the next 50 years. Just the way they've embraced Islamic banking, Islamic finance. You go to London, you go to Brazil, you go anywhere, there is Islamic this thing. Like Sheikh Nuruddin Lemo was saying earlier, it is not that people don't want to accept from us. They want to see it. If it works, they will embrace it. One of the richest Chinese business men in Malaysia, he doesn't take any other loan other than from an Islamic bank. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry about that.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim Dooba, for this educating presentation. I think we are quickly going to move into question and answer session. I would like whoever wants to ask question to indicate with a show of a hand, so that I will give numbers. We have only 15 minutes for the entire question and answer session. And therefore, when I give you a number and invite you to come and speak, I hope you are going to do that in just 30 seconds. No dogon turanci, no, just get to the point. Yeah, so numbers. Okay, I start. Right, go. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Ismail 5, Dr. Kaul 6, Imam 7. Okay, number 1. Okay, you can.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was just clarifying something from him, so I'm not breaking the rule. He has told me to go ahead. I actually don't have a question, just a contribution. And I'll try and squeeze it into 30 seconds. May Allah make it easy. The first is, I think for us as Muslims, we have to figure out what we don't want, distinguish that from what are the things we assume. We know we don't want corruption. We don't want a system that is unjust. We don't want poor quality of life in our societies. So we have to clarify what we don't want. Then we need to separate that from the assumptions we are making. And I think over the decades that I've heard this whole question about democracy, Islamization, and so on, we make an assumption that if you dress up a system, in Islamic terminologies, it makes the system Islamic. It's like saying if a prostitute puts on a hijab, she suddenly becomes chaste. I'm sorry to use that extreme example, but that's what I think we are doing mentally. We are making an assumption. What are we forgetting? We are forgetting that systems are not animate, systems are not tangible, systems don't have a soul or a conscience. A system is not accountable. A system will not stand before Allah on Judgment Day. It's people who run systems. Systems, the word a system or a structure or a method is what we call the way that people do things. Our quarrel is with the system that is called democracy in its various forms. Thereby we are missing the point. We are backing up the wrong tree. We are not focusing on the people who are handling the governance. We are focusing on the system. The people will either work towards the aims of Sharia or they don't, knowingly or unknowingly. Whether the person is a Muslim, a Christian, a pagan, an atheist. Our focus should be on the people. Are they working towards the aims of Sharia, which we all know? I won't repeat them. Every speaker has gone over these things again. Are they working along those lines? That should be our primary concern, not what name do the people call the system. The last speaker, Dr. Ibrahim Dooba, gave very perfect examples of places we assume will be okay because they are Muslim majority places or they carry the name Islamic. But here I said when you look at it in practice, it's not so. This is important for us. Historically, we've had caliphs, Muslim leaders who have been corrupt, who have fought against the knowledgeable ones when they hold them accountable or point out what they've done wrong. It is things like that we should focus on, the people, not the name they give the system of governance. We keep looking towards that if you have an Islamic state, Nigeria is going to be better. If you call it Islamic or Sharia focus, Nigeria is going to be better. That is still a mistake, because even if you come down to the level of the everyday Muslim, are we actually practicing Islam, everyday Muslim, in your everyday life? I'll give a quick example. This person is coming closer, so I'll shift a little. I'll give a quick example. We've all been given bottles of water to drink. And during the break, when I looked around, some people had theirs neatly upright. Then some bottles of water were on the floor, totally empty. And I found myself wondering, will the owner of that bottle remember to take the bottle and put it in the dustbin? The issue is not whether they were given bottles of water or how they were given. That's a system. The dustbin is somewhere there, floating in that open space. That's a system. The issue is not where the bottle is placed, where the dustbin is placed. The issue is the individual who has the conscience, the willpower, the consciousness, the agency, the God-given abilities to pick up the bottle and put it in the dustbin. Will he do it? Or will she do it? Or will he or she say, I didn't even know there was a dustbin. Did you look for it? Where they put the dustbin is not good. Did you look for it? The question is the person, not the individual. Then the education of the people on what are the standards that Islam demands of an everyday Muslim. Whether or not you live in a democracy, a monarchy, an Islamic state, so-called authentic one, on the day of judgment, Allah will not start with, what am I saying, day of judgment? From the grave, the question will not be what kind of state did you live in? What was the system of governance? The questions will begin with you, from your core, from your heart. Are you a Muslim? The questions will be about how you lived your life every day, what goals you strived for. So we need to educate the people. Why this is essential is leaders come from the people. Look at all of us in this room. Sooner or later, if we are not already in some form of governance or leadership in some such position, we will eventually be. in this room, at least one person is probably already in government right now. And more will be if Allah gives us more life, more years. Leaders do not come from the rank of the angels. They don't come from the ranks of aliens or the rank of the jinns. Leaders arise from the people. And the way the people are as a collective whole, that is how their leaders will most likely be. It's mathematics. It's not a prophecy, it's math, law of probability. So if we do not educate Muslims about the standards of behavior, the standards of principles of what Islam requires of every Muslim, you can create an Islamic state, you can dress it up in Islamic terminologies, Caliph, Amir, Mu'mineen, Shura Council, not Electoral College, dress it up any way you like. Eventually the dressing will come off when the person wants to do what he or she wishes and not what Allah wishes. So this energy we are spending debating is democracy, Islamic, un-Islamic, we are wasting time.
I wish to thank you.
Thank you very much. Take your mic.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. The second comment or question? Okay, please, presenters, I hope you will take note of the question. I will appreciate it if you direct your question to an individual. That is much easier. So we are taking all the questions, then the speakers will come back and respond to questions directed to them. So please, I hope you'll be economical with time.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My question goes to the last speaker. When he was talking about some deficiencies of democracy, that one of the problems with democracy is that democracy is not compatible with capitalism. Sorry if I got him correctly. I'm a bit confused there because some time ago I read a book titled The Protocol of Zionism, which they claimed that it was written in a Jewish language translated into English language in 1927. The book stated clearly that the modern capitalism is democracy. And we can see from the scene, not hidden, that people that champion and promote democracy are real capitalists. So I am a bit confused there. What does the doctor mean by democracy is not compatible with capitalism? Sorry.
Alaikum salam. Thank you very much. Number 3. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Actually, my comment will touch on about 2 or 3 lectures, but I won't direct it to a particular one. But as I comment on, you will know which one it relates to. I think there's a problem of conceptual clarification here. We've heard several times like Islamic democracy, Islamic this, Islamic that. And it is very important because at times when a political scientist is addressing issues like this, there are bound to be problems. I was in a conference where a scholar in political science was discussing political Islam. And the moment I heard that term, I was worried. Political Islam is a term that a person learning in Islamic law or in Islamic study will find to be offensive. But those in political science will see it as a common terminology to deal with. So to start with, I think we need to be very, very sure of what we are saying. Because even in civilizational discourse, it is wrong to say, for instance, that Western civilization and Islamic civilization are both the same or they are compatible. It is wrong to start with. The default rule is that they are not compatible, although there are meeting points in between the two. So when we are saying democracy is compatible with Islam, it has some implications. Are we saying even those deficiencies in democracy too are compatible with Islam? So that is number one. The second thing is that I think there's a need for us to go back into history. When we are discussing Islamic system of governance, there is the classical form of Islamic system of governance, there is the contemporary form of Islamic form of governance. And this one will be very, very clear. I think maybe the second or third lecture, I think it is Dr. Babayo, he was mentioning something about opposition party in the one caliphate period. You see, that's an example of why we need to do a thorough distinction between the classical form and the contemporary form. In an attempt to try to put it in a contemporary perspective, we are going to history to bring things that are not compatible as examples. Can we call those opposition at that time as opposition parties as we have it in modern times? No. So the point to start with in discussing Islamic system of governance is to make a distinction between its classical form and contemporary form. Of course, there are so many issues identified in the contemporary form. In the material that was sent to us, you see many of the contemporary issues, and Dean has done a great work in giving a deep conceptualization into those issues from a pure Islamic law perspective. And I want to say a big kudos to them. And also on the Sharia debates, the doctor also mentioned that there's no holds barred about having Sharia. We should fight for it. At least we have it in the Constitution. Well, for those of us in the area, we know what we went through, what the nation, the Muslims went through to achieve what we even have in the Constitution today. We don't want to say Sharia debates. We know what it means. The Constituent Assembly, 1979, 89, blah, blah, blah. So what we have in the Constitution, as far as Muslims are concerned in Nigeria, is not what we desire. We must know, and it is simply because we are running democracy, so there's always this back and forth tussle between us and other forces in the country that do not want Sharia to have a breathing space. So lastly, some key things are very important in issues like this, and I think we need to be making this distinction very, very clear. Darul Harb, Darul Islam is one of those issues that many people find it pretty difficult to appreciate. How do you situate Nigeria, for instance? Some people will tell you Nigeria is Darul Islam, Nigeria is Darul Harb. These are, again, you see, it's an issue that is just an example of juristic endeavor. It's not something that is among the Sawabits. It's something that is a dynamic. In fact, when it started, it was one of the jurists, I think it was the Hanafiya, that introduced the term. Then Imam Shafi'i came just about 20 years or 40 years after it was institutionalized, the terminology, to say that no, the world we are now is no longer Darul Harb, Darul Islam, and introduced the third one, Darul Ahad, or it is also called Darul Sulam. So, as we evolve, we keep seeing the need to situate some of these things in the right context. And lastly, there may be issue with, I'm dropping now, sir. There may be issue, this one is also important. It is wrong to generally, sir. It is wrong to generally say that a country is Islamic, another country is un-Islamic. We need to be, you see, how do you determine whether a country is Islamic? It's an issue. The other time, the last speaker was saying, in the whole world, we have only 3 Islamic countries. And he was making reference to the official title of the 3 countries, Mauritania, Iran, and Pakistan. Now the question is, are we saying the official title of a nation is what we use to say it is Islamic? Okay, if you are throwing that part, then it means that Saudi Arabia will not be Islamic because it's called Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But then if you see the concept of Saudi Arabia, you tend to say that it's what? It is Islamic, because the Nizam al-Asasi al-Hukm, which is the basic laws of Saudi Arabia, state that the constitution is based on what? The Quran and Sunnah. So we need to determine criteria that should be used for some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 4, right? 4.
Assalamu alaikum. My own question, I'm trying to bring it from another perspective, not from the perspective of applying democracy to Islam or vice versa. My own perspective is, for those using democracy now, what is the ruling of democracy? I want to believe that there is nothing in Islam that exists on vacuum. There should be a ruling. What will be the ruling of democracy? Or in another expression, what will be the ruling of the features of democracy? The elections, the campaigns, and every other thing under democracy. What will be the ruling? Assalamu alaikum.
What are you asking?
And other.
Okay, this question is to all presenters. Number 5, Ismail. I hope you will be sharp.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I appreciate all the presenters. I know it's critical and it's important to define something. As just the first presenter says, that الحكم على شيء فرع عن تصوره. So it's good to get that, right. But it seems there has been a very serious problem regarding this, particular topic. Because of this, I'm just thinking, shouldn't we just leave even these terms aside and study the features or the characteristics of an Islamic system of governance? Since we know it's not a new, politics in Islam is not new, shouldn't we just focus on, let's itemize and study what are the features, what are those elements that makes a system be an Islamic system? So I think if we do that, it allows us to filter any other system coming. Just use it as ma'yar. Is it compatible with the features or characteristics we have in Islam? If yes, alhamdulillah. If no, then we know it's not Islamic. But beyond that, I think we need to go beyond or look beyond the terms. Just as a scholar said, we are living in a world where we are fighting, the battle of mustalahat, the terminologies. Because of course, in democracy has been discussed, a number of things are there. Justice, of course, emphasized in Islam. Election also, from the explanation made, how Uthman, became the Khalif through election, inclusion, freedom, shura, all these are in Islam. But I think we just have to think beyond the terminologies so that we just use Islamic text to endorse, because I believe in all religion, all systems, some of these things are there. But I think what we should concern, about is more freedom, guided by what? Justice, guided by what? The shura, guided by what? I think this is very, very critical. Otherwise, we just see us, endorsing things, and then there's justice is compatible, let's go. The freedom, Islam encourages that, but what are the limitations? I think if we do this, it allows you to know whether the system we are into is Islamic or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 7? Or you are 6? Okay, let's see.
Sorry, I have a question, but I think sometimes we have to be very bold enough to say Islam is Islam. If we are operating on an Islamic pedestal, you see, when Sukuk comes into Nigeria, everybody is happy because they were able to give what they ought to give. And for the word Sukuk, we believe is an Islamic word, and it's serving us today. Americans come to Nigeria and they are proud of the system they are bringing into the country to tell us that this is how we will follow and we will get what we want in the nation. And this is what brought about democracy and other crises. I think we must move forward and not to be apologetic to anybody over what we believe is our insight into the world affairs. And that brings me to this question now. The question is basically for second to last speaker, who gave 3 alternatives that can be operational in Nigeria. Nigeria, I regard it as a hostile, multi-religious nation. Today, when you bring this question, a question of Islam, into any affair, you already have a group of Christians wanting to reply you whether they don't care whether that is beneficial or not. That's why I call it hostile, multi-religious nation. So with this, how can we be successful in adopting these three alternatives of establishment, deliberation, and participation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The last person? 7, go. No, sure. I am sorry. I'm sorry. No, you can.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, all appreciations to the presenters. My question can go directly to the last presenter, even though many of us might have something to add. Is it right to say that Islam, or specifically our Prophet ﷺ, emphasized more on personalities, building the personality than the system? All this issue of who is just, who is honest, who has amana, who is all this, these have been the things that we see in the text being emphasized about the person. So whatever system is in place, if the person have these qualities, then Islam will achieve something better. And that is why, whether it is monarchical system, autocratic, or whatever, if the personality is having all these features or qualities, we get it right. Then secondly, the issue of definition. A definition has always been a very difficult thing. People will say, for example, philosophers of science, to differentiate between science and non-science is a very difficult thing. But what you can do, you can identify what is not science. And then from there you can identify, you can say this is science and this is non-science. So can we look at it this way? Rather than talking about or trying to define democracy, or Islamic system, what is not Islamic, what is not Islamic, by the time we remove what is not Islamic, then we can now see what is Islamic irrespective of whatever system we're talking about. I tend to see Islam with all systems in 3 ways. When we talk about ideal Islam, we don't relate it with any other thing. Then we have other things that Islam accommodates. And then we can now say all these things are accommodated by Islam. Then we have other things that Islam outrightly rejects. I think by this we can identify which system will be for our own benefit. Then second to the last, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, there were a lot of efforts by the Muslims. What was wrong with all those efforts? What are the lessons for us to get from those efforts? For example, to my own little understanding, one of the longest standing efforts to bring back the Islamic system is the Muslim Brotherhood. What went wrong? What went wrong? And why is it that the proponents of democracy, the leaders or those that are propagating democracy, are always against this kind of effort that come from the Muslims? We can see that in Algeria, in Egypt, in Tunisia, and other places. And sometimes even the Muslims themselves seems not to be comfortable with this kind of effort. What is happening? Then lastly, in Nigeria, I think to see that we need to discuss more on how to benefit as Muslims from the existing system, not necessarily endorsing the system or rejecting the system. I see it as we are seeing ourselves in a situation where we have the available. Can we use the available to achieve what we need? These are the kind of things I think we should be focusing as far as Nigeria is concerned. This is the available opportunity. How can we use it to achieve what we need as Muslims? Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. I learned that there are some brothers and sisters that asked questions online. So I will invite Brother Muaz to read the questions so that the presenters will quickly answer us.
Should I read it with the microphone?
Yeah, you should read it with the mic. Wait.
I have to go there.
You have to bring it back. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, the first question here says, what is the ruling of democracy and what is the ruling of the futures of democracy? I think one of us have already asked that same question. So the second one is, my question is to the last discussant. What is our concern as regarding democracy as Muslims? Are we comparing Islamic rules and democracy, or military rules and democracy, or are we saying Islamic political system is a military rule? Because I heard you, if I'm right, that people prefer democracy to military rule. I think that's a question for me.
Two questions?
Yes.
Okay, so I will quickly invite, it seems most of the questions are directed to the speakers that are here present, particularly Dr. Babeo and Dr. Dooba. I will now start by inviting Dr. Babeo to respond to some of the questions directed to him. Then Dr. Dooba, then I invite Barrister Attahir to equally respond to some of the general questions raised. You have 3 minutes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. On the question of how in Nigeria we are going to actualize or situate ourselves within the context of the three models that I presented, well, there are many ways we can do that. In fact, to me, if to say we have a sound strategy, by now we should have done that since. Take the first one, establishment. I think I gave an example of a Malaysian model. And we just have, to a certain level, a kind of a similar society with them. Just the way we are almost House of Fulani as they tag us in nomenclature. Then we have the Igbos and the Yorubas. They also have the Malays, and then the Indians and the Chinese. So what they did in the case of establishment was not to say a Malaysian Islamic Party. No, they didn't do that. They just say United Malaysian National Organization. And in the process of securing power, because there is an opposition, there is a Barisan National, Pakatan Harapan and other parties. What they did was, they will now have a coalition with the Chinese that we are going to give you Minister of Finance or Minister of Foreign Affairs or something like that, and they'll connect with some Indians too. But once they assume power, they have a standing policy. I think as mentioned by Dr. Ibrahim Dooba, for example, a Malay cannot convert to Christianity, whether male or female. It's a rule up to their Supreme Court, and nobody challenged that, and they use their party and politics to do that. And a Muslim should not buy alcohol in Malaysia. There was, even I tried it. When I said, let me try it, I said, please, how much is it? No, it's haram. I said, how did she even recognize that I am a Muslim? She just smiled. I said, no, I need it. She smiled. She said, no, haram. So you can do it by a step. We can use any party. If you like, you can use whether the devil or the evil party. You can go to APC, you can go to PDP, you can go to PRP. It's not necessary that you must even establish a one. You can build or infiltrate a one. And you can build another one if you like. So we can do it. It is not saying that if you assume power, you will say it's an Islamized party. That's what I'm saying is, we introduce the strategies and the policies that we want in action. And there are areas where we have the power to do that. In a state where we are now, in major state, who can stop the court from ruling using Islamic injunction? Sharia court is there. So that is why in the case of deliberative, say we still have the number, not only to participate in politics, but also to influence the direction of the politics and also to determine where we stand. Don't forget, it is not about going to mosque, it is not about fasting the month of Ramadan, it is not about Zakat. Islam is all-encompassing. We have social issues that we want. We need more centers like this nationwide. We have economic issues, we have political issues, we have cultural issues. For example, they will tell you that corporate dress is when you wear a t-shirt and just a trouser, or when a lady wears maybe a jeans or a trouser and a top. They will say that is corporate. And even if she is a Muslim, that is corporate dress. If we want, for example, we can reverse this facade by saying that now corporate dress is our own dress. Which corporate dress is better than gari and hijab in comparison with the ones that make you look like a monkey sometimes? So that is one aspect. In the case of participatory, I even said that this one is not even for our own lives. It's where the Muslims are minority. And don't forget that if you are thinking of Nigeria being fragile and volatile, It's not only Nigeria. There is a study by one Aaron Lichpat, Consensus Democracy, that even he used 5 countries, Netherlands, which is Holland, Austria, Hungary, Sweden, and Switzerland, that these societies are plural. Most of us, I believe, will think that they are homogeneous in Europe, but they are plural. And he said that they could not even put a democracy until when they settle in what he called consensus democracy. This ethnic group will have this religious group will benefit from this. That is how they design now democracy in Netherlands, in Austria, in Switzerland, and that's how they are still operating it. So we can operate it this way. So I think that is it. Then on the other question, that what is the ruling, is it of Islam on issues like election, like multi-party competition, opposition? I think this were discussed by Barrister Attahir, I think vividly. I also said something on that. That look, we need to look at the context and the dynamism. If you are talking of election took place under Caliph Umar, the Shura. Of course, they said there were step downs, consensus, but still election. Because the instruction given to them was clear: go and elect from among you the next Caliph that will succeed me. So election took place. So therefore, that was not the first time. And if it is consultation, which is democracy, maybe from the prophet himself, mutual consultation and acceptance is there. So I think if scholars like Al-Mawardi, like Ibn Khaldun, like Al-Ghazali, and then the medieval ones like Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, and even the contemporary ones like Al-Qaradawi, Ibn Podio, and rest believe that no matter how tyrant a leader is, we should obey him. Then I think there is nothing wrong in electing. That is, Al-Mawardi even went to the extent of saying that even if he imposes himself on you, and even if he is not just, all in order to stop Fasad, you should just obey him, provided he will allow you to practice your religion. So I think, going by this, what is wrong in saying, okay, you are given a liberty to elect? And don't forget that Islam was very careful and conscious of the fact that if this leadership is something that, for example, Zakat was specified in the Holy Quran, even those that should be beneficiary, 8 of them, in Surah Al-Tawbah. The month of Ramadan was isolated for what? Fasting. And so inheritance was what? Shared by the Holy Quran. So if leadership is something that we must follow only one way without an alternative or dynamics, Quran will have mentioned that. Or even Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam will have said that that is how we should do it. But it was deliberate that it was allowed open because of the perception of the dynamics that the world is going, what we are going to face. And then there is also, though it's a comment, not a question, also that what is the ruling of Islam and democracy? Okay, it's a question, isn't it? Ruling of Islam and democracy. Well, we say it is not democracy that is the problem. You can democratize Islam, you can Islamize democracy. It is just that there is no compromise, that you must operate Sharia. The system of Islamic governance is Sharia, justice, and the promotion of the overall well-being of the all. This one is never compromised by any scholar or any philosopher. Now, to take these principles and apply them in democracy is allowed. In fact, there is an argument that no system is the best. If you are talking about military, Japan and Germany and Russia reached their peak of development under military, under Hitler, Joseph Stalin. If you are talking of modern development, monarchical regimes like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and many others are now witnessing miracle under monarchical regime. If you are talking of liberal democracy, many countries witness development under it. If you are talking of the socialist democracy, many countries are now witnessing development under. In fact, if you come down to Nigeria, most quality projects and institutions were built and provided on ground by military. If you compare a university built by IBB regime or by Abacha regime with a university now being built, you will distinguish between the two. So it's not about just the theoretical system, it's about what is really on ground. And then there is a comment made by somebody just some seconds, that we should stop comparing all these things. And you see, if you are talking about opposition, he said we mentioned the kind of rivalry under the Seljuks and the Ottoman Empire, that the context now differs. Let me tell you something. The kind of rivalry, opposition, and assassination under the Seljuks and the Ottoman Empire was more intense and even more bizarre than the one that is taking place in contemporary Islamic world. So still, past event can be used to refer to an example with the contemporary event, provided it has the relevance and it will make the case that we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I invite Dr. Dooba, Dr. Ibrahim Dooba. I don't have to police you this time.
Sheikh keeps reminding us that I'm from Niger. I remember we were coming to this hall when we were children to listen to Sheikh for tafsir. So I think I have only two questions, right? The person who said he's confused about my claim that democracy is not compatible with capitalism. Okay, I don't think there is any confusion here. Capitalism, it's all about capital maximization for an individual or group of people. Democracy is about social development of the people. There's no individual here, people. So that is the difference. But now, there is what is called democratic capitalism, which seeks to build companies for social reasons. Okay, let me give you, maybe if I give you one practical example, you understand what I mean by capitalism is not democracy. You know Amazon, right? Amazon wanted to buy a company that sold nappies, you know, these Pampers for children. And the company said, we are not selling. What did they do? They lowered their own nappies, the ones that Amazon was selling, to almost zero. You can come to Amazon, come and buy, come and buy, come and buy. They were losing money. But because Amazon is a big company, right? So they kept, and these people, because nobody was buying from them, they kept losing money. So they went to Amazon and said, we are selling. That is pure capitalism. We want to buy your company because we think if we buy it, we are going to be rich. We don't care what you want. And that is the reason why even in America there is what is called antitrust. If one company becomes so big that other little companies in that sector cannot compete, the government will say, break it down. You have to leave some part of the business. It happened against AT&T. It happened against even Microsoft. There are some companies now that the government is trying to say, no, you are becoming too big. We were the protectors of the people, and the people are suffering under your behemoth. I hope you understand it now. Of course, I get your point, and probably that was what the book was saying about the Zionist book. Every system you create, people will seek to what? Abuse it. People will seek to abuse it. It's even in the Quran, as in Surah Al-Kahf, where Allah says that humans are prone to dispute, right? Someone should give me that ayah. وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانَ Very good. وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانَ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. Good. So they will try to find a way abuse it. The second question, which is my last question, somebody said he didn't know whether I want military or, is that the question? Or democracy, or, I actually didn't understand this question. Islamic countries.
Actually, you said you cited examples of military dictatorship, and then you talked about, you made a case for democracy. Are you saying Islam is a military dictatorship, and therefore democracy is better?
Okay. I didn't make any case for military dictatorship. I told you those stories to highlight the fact that power in one individual shouldn't be encouraged. Yes. Oh, that's another question. In the literature, this is what is understood. These are the 3 Islamic countries. I was citing the literature, not my opinion. So if you want to know further on that subject, go to Dr. Babayo. He is the expert. And about the last guy, I really wasn't championing a military rule. In fact, I mentioned it here that I prefer, even in our situation now, the democracy that we have than the military rule that we had. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Barrister Ibrahim Tahir. Babu wanda aka yi directing to you, kawai in akwai wanda kai capturing da you want to say. Okay. That is more jurisprudential.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I think there are certain things that we miss. And that is why some of these questions are being repeated. Whether, like Dr. Babu said, whether we choose to democratize Islam or Islamize democracy or remain adamant, we are still Muslims and we are still in Nigeria. So the issue is what best can we have out of the hopeless situation? You see, the early generation of our fathers in this Islamic work, there were many of them have now gone to the world beyond. But maybe if you single out persons like Sheikh Abu Bakr Mahmoud Gumi, late Sheikh Ahmed Lemu, maybe 1 or 2 others, they are the ones that you can pinpoint steps they took that have brought and are still bringing a lot of transformation, depending on the course they decided to take. Like the late Sheikh Ahmed Lemu chose the path of establishing institutions. We have not heard about him going from city to city, town to town, village to village, conducting preachings. But the holistic approach he took, just as individuals, some of his contemporaries went to establish Islamic organizations. They did their best, but a single individual, look at the foreign trainings for students. look at the institutions, developmental projects, look at the da'wah activities in terms of training, whatever. So, these things that are being done can silently bring a lot of changes. That is why we are having these narrations now. That is why we are having this conversation now. Otherwise, we remain as Nigerians, we remain as Muslims, but the opportunities that the system has given to us will not be even known to us. One of the things I mentioned is that if the Constitution, if democracy have given us rights, then it is left for us what we do with it. Maybe apart from the federal arrangement we are having, confederal system could have been the best for us, because under confederal arrangement we will have more leverage to fashion out our political system, our legal system, our whatever in the way we like. Maybe some of these things we underrate is because we don't compare ourselves with others, even here in Nigeria. Look at the Yoruba Muslims. If you are a Yoruba Muslim, Lagos is predominantly Muslim. The same thing for you, but you have to take your case of matrimonial, child custody, divorce and whatever to a customary court. Despite the provisions in the Constitution that a state that likes it can establish a Sharia court of appeal. But this is not possible in Yoruba law. So you can see that even under the same arrangement, the way you position yourselves, the type of leaders you have, the ability you have to put your acts together will make a lot of difference. So instead of arguing, I think we better see how best we can exploit we can take advantage of this system and better the lot of Islam and Muslims. La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. If you don't have the ability, it is not for me. It is not my personal responsibility as an individual to establish an Islamic state. It's a collective one. And that is why I gave the example of how when the Sultanate Tahiru I was abandoning the territory for them, they still had to pursue him and kill him, because somebody told me the first day I was taken to this Bormi, I asked, where is the village? They said, there is no village there, the place is now farmlands. I said, where are the inhabitants? They said, the authorities will come and chase you. So Bormi is seen as a symbol of resistance, so they don't want it to exist. So that is how power game is. إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا أعزة أهلها أذلة وكذلك يفعلون. You know, in the power game, even friends are not safe. Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, if you know his history, he assisted the Abbasid dynasty to defeat the Umayyads. But the Abbasids became afraid of him, that this is a very powerful general. If he was able to defeat one dynasty and establish another, then that another too, he can defeat it and bring another one. So, what is this? Abu Ja'far al-Mansur was suggesting to his elder brother, who was the the caliph, that he should kill. He was loyal, but they felt that he was a threat, that he should be killed. But the elder brother was hesitating. So now he sent Abu Muslim al-Khurasani together with Abu Ja'far al-Mansur to Hajj. And while they were coming back, the Caliph died. So Abu Ja'far became the Caliph. And that was how he eliminated Abu Muslim al-Khurasani. So in this power game, we should not take anything for granted. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much. I think so much to do with difference between reality and our assumptions and theory. I think that brings us towards the end of this session. I will now invite Director Research and Training to give vote of thanks and closing remark for this particular session, after which we will go for break, we do our salat and eat, and then we come back by 4 to take the second session of the day. Brother Nuruddin, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. So, vote of thanks first, and I'll just start by saying thank you. Really most appreciative of the intellectual depth that, alhamdulillah, I think we were taken through from this morning to this afternoon. May Allah continue to reward you abundantly. May Allah continue to improve your knowledge, your wisdom, and may Allah lengthen the time in which you continue to share with us. And I hope, inshallah, we will be meeting again. A few comments, 3 main points. Number 1, there is a book, Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's very common, you find it around. But I would like to request anybody, any book that is trying to blacklist anybody, go with the advice of the Quran on in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in. Go with what you know from your studies in ulum al-hadith. Who produced it? Who is the author? Who is propagating it? Why? Otherwise you come and accuse people who are innocent, and you add to those who had their own reasons for wanting to kill Jews. So you can actually go to Wikipedia and look at the debates on who is the author of the Elders of the Protocols of Zion. It's a book that was available since we were in university in the late 80s and 70s, 80s and 90s. It was in circulation. Many of us read it, believed, till gradually you are able to start digging who is the author of this, and you realize these are people who you don't want to come anywhere near them. No scholar of hadith would consider that a credible source of material. The second point I want to make is on the challenge we have with the words we use in describing things as Islamic political system, Islamic democracy. Personally, and I'm still studying usul, I have not come across a word that is a bid'ah, I'll use that term in a negative sense, that is a bid'ah and that pollutes the discussion of a topic like the English adjective Islamic. There's fard, mustahab, mubah, makruh, haram. Stick with those. When you come with a term called Islamic, Islamic is which one? Is fard Islamic? Or is it un-Islamic? Is mustahab Islamic or is it un-Islamic? Is mubah Islamic or is it un-Islamic? Is makruh un-Islamic or is it Islamically permissible? No sin, but just discouraged. When your approach to issues is one where you have divided things conceptually into two, un-Islamic being haram, Islamic being halal, but under the halal, which is Islamic, we have a maxim that al-asl fil ashya al-ibaha, that the premise of Islam is mubah category. anything from any culture, from any part of the world, so long as it doesn't conflict with the Quran and Sunnah and it is in the area of mu'amalat, is halal by default. It is now for you to say which category of halal does it belong to. There's the kind of urf, custom, which because of how beneficial it is, that al-ada is muhakkama and it is given the position of fard or wajib, even though it is urf that was not even originating from Islam. But it serves the function. So I would contribute, the reason is because when we are asked, shu'uban wa qaba'il lita'arafu, that hikmah is the lost property of Muslim, you take it from wherever you found it. And we found the Prophet ﷺ taking a military strategy of, forgive my language, kuffar group of Persians or Zoroastrians, but their kufr had nothing to do with the good strategy they had. And he adopted it in saving the lives, alhamdulillah, of Muslims, and it came from, and there were many hadith where the Prophet said, I was going to prohibit this, but the Romans and the Persians, it didn't hurt them, so therefore I didn't. What the Romans, and was that Islamic? When you use the word Islamic, you blur the water. Whereas if you stick with, is it mubah? Easy to answer. Is this mustahab? Is it makruh? Is it haram? Easy to answer. But when you bring the word Islamic into usul al-fiqh, which scholar are you going to quote that's giving you the guidelines for Islamic? So while for, Islamic education, Islamic banking, Islamic finance, we use it for identity purposes. But bringing it into usul al-fiqh, you mess the discussion up. So in answer to the question, my own Ganganchi or Karambani, to the question that was raised, what is the ruling of Islam on democracy? Correctly understood, I think if democracy is dealing with, because the gentleman Idris asked the question in two ways. He said, what is Islam's ruling on democracy, or what is Islam's ruling on the components of democracy? Whether it is democracy or the components of democracy, if it is in usul, we ask a question. Is it ibadah or is it mu'amalat? If it is ibadat, we heard yesterday of the views on tawaqquf, or it's haram by default in that area. But if it is under mu'amalat and social transactions, umuru dunyakum, there's the default ruling of Sharia on every issue to do with mu'amalat. And al-asl fil asha al-ibaha. It is mubah by default. It is now for somebody to say, but for this reason it will be makruh, but for this reason it will be mustahab, but for this reason it will be haram. But the default ruling on all that is under mu'amalat is mubah by default, as I have understood it. A suggestion was given, and Brother Ismail came with one approach, Brother Yankuzo came with another approach. And the approach that Ismail asked is, should we not just itemize features of a system of politics that are Islamic? Okay? If you're going to say something is Islamic, what are the features? Okay. So just list what is Islamic, and whatever is not there is un-Islamic. But the Imam Yankuzo came with the opposite of what is it that is not Islamic about a political system. So let's just mention the things that are haram, not Islamic, and everything else is halal. Okay? I think that is more in line with istishab. The reason is, when it comes to politics or economics or anything, if you say let's list the halal, the remaining is haram, then the istishab is that the asl of everything is haram except the halal on your list. Okay? And it kills the creativity of borrowing from the ta'aruf that we get from the rest of the world. Why? Let us not forget, Allah sent prophets to all of humanity. All of humanity were given some form of wisdom. Some is good. Some of this wisdom is good and useful. Some is not. Some of these forms of wisdom are not. It is for us to use the Furqan of the Quran and the Sunnah as our criteria to move with al-asl is ibaha unless there's evidence to the contrary. But what is so I agree with Imam Yankuzo, I agree with the spirit in which Brother Ismail raised it, that it will be good to make a list of what is it that is haram, what is it that should be fard. So for example, you must stand for justice. Or you could put it the other way around, there should be no injustice. Manutun bil maslaha, it should achieve maslaha and those features. But what I think the problem, so I think it's good, and there's a book, the one by Hamuda Abdel Ati, oh Allah, Islam in Focus, a book produced since the 60s or 70s. If you go to the section on Islamic political system, it actually starts by saying every system that achieves the objectives of Sharia is Islamic so long as it doesn't do what is wrong. And these are the features. And I think it's good to look at them. But my problem is, so it's good. My concern is somebody is still going to ask the question, what about election? What about term of office? So even though you would say, everything halal except what is haram, they will still want to say, are you saying we can have a term like it's a contract? Whether you have it or not, it's halal, it's up to you on maslaha. So I think that job is, the suggestion is good, which is, and to me, in our material for Deen that we shared with everybody, which we will be looking at in the afternoon, what we were trying to do is list some of those principles in the beginning, and please, we would like to request, look at it during the break time. Sorry, I'm chopping your break. Look at it during the break time, and see how when we go into groups, you will want to enrich it. Because that's really the main, to me, the big takeaway at the end of today is by 6:30 when we do the closing dua, Deen has a richer material that is the product of everything you already know, everything you have heard today, and you have added it into our material, inshallah. Thank you so much for your patience and your perseverance. May Allah continue to guide us all. Sorry for being between you and your food. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think this brings us to the end of this session. So we are breaking for lunch and Salatul Zuhur and Asr. Then we come back by 4, inshallah. Thank you very much until we meet by 4. Thank you.